What I've done is similar to last meeting, I've just put everybody's photos and comments into the PowerPoint, so in no particular order. As before, just some questions to think about / answer when we get to your photo section. So some of them are self-evident that they've been grazed, but if they have or haven't, were there any grazing preferences if they've been grazed? Roughly how much rainfall have you had to date? And do you think it's been enough? How's the crop progressing both from a livestock edibility point of view and just in general? Is it competing or doing the job that you want it to do? Have you made a photo point? And have you put any fert? Have you irrigated, or have you seen any pests or weeds that we didn't cover last time? So just a bit of a general update when we can get to your section would be lovely with some of that stuff. So Doug and Carl, first cab off the rank. So quick recap. So we're going to, I suppose, go through the photos of each participant in the cover crops, roughly how we did in the first meeting. So it'll be no particular order, but we'll just go through and talk in general about the cover crops and how they're progressing. So just for reference, I kept usually one photo from each member of the group who's put a cover crop in from that first meeting that we had, so we can just see where they were at then and versus now. So in that top right-hand corner, you can see the mix that Doug and Carl put in just to feed cattle. You can see on the left-hand side what the cover crop looked like on the 20th of May, and now on the right-hand side what it's looking like. It's being grazed at the moment. There's 87 head of cattle on there, so they've been on there for about 3 weeks now. So they're clearly liking everything that's in the mix, which is good. But hopefully we might hear from Doug and Carl now if they're here for listening.
Yes, they're there. Doug will just need to unmute himself so that we can hear him.
Doug, are you there?
And Doug just needs to hit the microphone to unmute yourself if you can. If you don't have a microphone, just maybe pop something in the chat box. Otherwise, you might just need to keep going, Jade.
Okay, so we'll keep going, but looks like, well, a really good establishment and quite good utilisation. So you can see most of the cereals there have been chewed off, and so have the brassicas. There's a few leaves floating about, but I'd say that's a pretty good grazing result. So hopefully the cattle look good, and they had a bit of roughage as well. That would have been pretty palatable, and good grazing results. So Brodie's up next. Is Brodie online, Lucy?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay, so
Brodie, well, we've got an unknown person, but I'm not sure who that is.
okay, so if Brodie can't talk or he's not here, I'll just go through his photos. So on the left-hand side, you can see what it looked like on the 24th of May, and on the right-hand side, what it looked like a couple of days ago. So pretty good growth from that. Good cereal establishment and the brassicas as well. So we've got a bit going on in that paddock. We'll flip through to the next slide, which is a close-up of some of the tillage radish he's got with just some small tubers starting to happen there, and then a bit of close-up of predominantly the brassicas in that mix. So we've got some pretty lovely big leaves there. No real yellowing that I can see, so it looks to have pretty good nutrition, and a bit hard to see whether there's any insect damage, but I'm hoping not. I think he had some early on, but hasn't had any trouble since. So we probably can't answer most of these questions. I don't suspect it's been grazed yet, but the crop progress to me looks really good. So, yep.
Sorry, Jade. There's a comment which might be Brody in the chat box, which says there was a lot of self-sown barley to start with, and they ate that off first.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I did forget that. Yep. So
it's Brody. Hello, Brody.
Good job, Brody.
Doug.
Oh, that's Doug. Sorry, Doug.
Oh, yeah. No, Doug had his own.
Can Doug hear us or talk to us?
He's using the chat box.
Okay. Shall we go back to his slides?
Yeah.
So I'll just flick backwards.
Have you finished with Brody's?
Just about, yep. That was about it. So that was his photo.
That's
so
pretty good.
He had some red-legged earth mite early on, but no real damage with anything else, which was good. So I'd say he's not too far off grazing. So we'll head back to Carl. Doug's typing something into the chat box, hopefully.
He hasn't mentioned anything else.
Okay. Was he happy with grazing utilisation?
Maybe I'll call him. You might have to keep going, Jade, and I'll try and get Doug or Carl on the phone.
Is Dan on board?
Doug said it is lasting fairly well. So are they still in there, Doug? Or have they? Do you know, Jade? Are they still in there, or have they come out?
Well, they were on there as 20 seconds, so I presume that they might still be on there.
Yeah, still in there.
Yeah.
How big is Doug's paddock? How big is that Chamberlain paddock?
Oh, I can't tell you because I can't get out of this to look at my spreadsheet. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
They've got 3, and I think they're all different sizes. One's fairly small and one's fairly big. And I can't remember the other one.
There's the trees paddock, I think, is not massive.
Yeah, the trees paddock's only, well, I don't know, a few hectares.
Yeah, 5 or 8 or something.
I can't get Doug on the phone. Sorry, he's not answering.
Okay. That's all right, but I'm glad he's happy with the cover crop so far. So I've had a quick look at Brody's. Brody's looks good. Some nice radishes with a good photo point reference there with the shifter.
35 hectares.
Oh,
The other paddock I was thinking.
the other one, yeah. So is Dan on board for this? Do we know?
Now I've got Doug with me.
Okay. I'll go back to Doug's photo just so we can.
Hello, Doug.
I had to get hooked up because I had the phone on and the computer.
Well, I've got you on speaker now, so if that goes through. Can anyone hear Doug?
Yep. I can hear Doug, yep.
No, the cattle are doing pretty well on that paddock.
Oh, but the speaking through the phone and then the computer isn't.
Maybe you relay it,
And
you just listen and relay. Yeah.
the cattle are on there and they're calving there.
Right.
Did they have any grazing preferences, Anne/Doug?
Okay, sorry, I have to relay. So he's got another paddock with the heifers on, which he doesn't want them to eat too much and for the calves to get too big. What was the question? Sorry.
Oh, were there any grazing preferences, Anne, when you put it on? Did they go for one thing over another, or are they pretty happy with the mix?
Did you hear that, Doug? Were they preferring anything in particular, or did they just eat a bit of everything? Okay, just hang on. So self-sown barley, the cows went for. The heifers ate pretty well everything, so but they weren't first on.
Okay.
Are you pleased with it? Okay, it's doing a very good job.
Excellent. Roughly how much rainfall has he had on that, Anne?
Do you know how much rainfall you've had? I should
Just
be able-
ballpark.
Jeff and Bronwyn, do you know how much rainfall you've had? $16 million in June.
I don't know how much we've had. No, out of touch with that completely.
Not much in
Not
July.
enough. Yeah, not enough, I would say.
Yeah.
Everything's looking good, but I reckon it's really on the cusp of.
It does look a bit dry in that photo.
Yes.
It does. You notice all the yellow leaves. The older leaves are yellowing and drying off. And Jeff's
Doug's looking for some more rain.
gone to.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just texting Jared at the same time.
What sort of inputs have we had on that paddock, Anne?
Doug, what have you put on it? Any fertiliser? Just a bit of MAP or something, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's not sure of the rate.
That's fine.
You have to look it up.
That's not a worry. Cool. Well, that's a pretty good result.
That's all right. We might move on to the next one, Jade, I think.
All right, so I've had a look at priorities. So Dan, do we have Dan on board?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll quickly whiz through Dan. So he's got a couple of mixes and there's some dry land, some irrigated. He didn't put fert on any of the covers at sowing. So mixes, as we've just mentioned, he says they're looking for a drink. The cattle are on there and they are grazing it, but he said they haven't been viciously grazing it, if that makes sense. They're sort of picking bits here and bits there, but no real grazing preference. There is a few thistle issues in his best paddock, so he's got obviously more than one. Photos are taken around about the 21st of July, but I haven't nailed him down on a specific date yet, but they're around about that. So good biomass there you can see, and a close-up of some of the legumes and grasses there on the left-hand side. And then you can see some lovely cattle. So they're in there, and hopefully they've got a real taste for it now, but they look to be doing okay by the look of things, which is good. Oh, that's it. Sorry, that was short and sweet.
Jared's trying to get on, but he's having trouble again.
Okay.
Keeps taking him to Microsoft Teams, but there's no meeting there.
Oh, does he need to accept the meeting?
I don't know.
No. Well, I might, because we have him sort of semi-present, I might go forward and we might be able to come back to him, if that's all right.
I've just resent him the link, but
Okay. Tyler.
Tyler, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see your lovely photos there?
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay, so these were obviously the ones that you took in our last meeting. And this is what mix one looks like now. So it's 6 weeks after grazing, isn't it?
Yep, that's correct.
Yep.
So,
good recovery.
yep. Admittedly, I probably picked a good part of the paddock there. It's not all looking as lush and green as that, but it has all sprung back quite quickly.
Good. That's good. So is there anything that was in the paddock that was grazed out by preference, or have you got most species back?
No, I think most is there. You'll see in that top photo, like the clovers are still not very dominant.
Yeah.
The oats, brassicas, tillage radish are the dominant species. And yeah, I mean, you generally got to go looking for the clover. Yeah, so, yep.
Excellent. That's good. Any real inputs that you'd like to mention, or any pests or diseases or anything that you've noticed?
So only initially at the start, right at sowing, which I touched base on last time, it got an insecticide spray because it was just getting hammered by mites and lucent flea, and I just couldn't watch it get eaten into the ground.
Yeah.
So that was a bit disappointing, but I just went and sprayed it, and I think in terms of actually maintaining what was there and stuff, I think I did the right thing in terms of that they were pretty aggressive and infestations were pretty high. There's been no additional urea or anything. It was just sown with 50 kilograms of zinc star at sowing time, and hasn't had any other fertilizers or sprays since that insecticide spray when it was emerging, basically, and no irrigation or anything. We've had 16 mils of rain for June and 6 mils of rain for July, so reasonably dry, but considering had the wet autumn, and then that paddock itself was actually watered up, so it has ample block. It has a good moisture base. Observations, compared to looking at other people's photos there and just looking at what I've got now, my sowing rates were too high, so I probably wasted a lot of dollars. Yeah, and what else is there? Yeah, no, I can't see any real preference of the sheep. For the sheep that we have ewes and lambs that were on it, that paddock there has maintained most of the radish, but where the sheep are now, and the radishes were bigger by the time the sheep got there, they've just chewed the tops of the radishes off now. But this paddock, the radishes were not as big and didn't have a big radish there to chew at when the sheep were there. Lots of trampling, which you might see in some other photos, and we're just strip grazing it in approximately 4 hectare lots, if that makes sense.
Excellent. And how many ewes and lambs would you have in that 4 hectares?
For 540 ewes with 570 lambs at foot.
Excellent.
Dave?
Yes.
I assume that once the tops of the radish have been chomped off, so if they've chomped it down what do you call it? The carrot bit.
Yes, the tuber, yeah.
It's puffed out. Will it keep growing underneath the soil for a while? Because it's got lots of energy, like the roots would keep going, wouldn't they?
A little bit. So what can happen, if they're sculpted off right at ground level, which we'll see in some photos a bit later, they'll probably die. But if they've taken all of that green leaf, like you can see in the right-hand side photo, and they've just nibbled a bit on the tuber but not really flattened it off, they might regrow. But if they have flattened it down to ground level and there was a fair bit of tuber above ground, they've probably killed it.
There's no way of controlling that, is there? The amount of tuber that pops out above the ground?
Not really. So I've got some in my paddock, and they're pretty big now. They've been in for 7 months, and they were some sown, and there's some enormous radishes that are busting out of the ground, and others I can't even see a hint of tuber. So it depends a little bit on whether they can find an easy path into the ground or whether they've been stymied by a stone or haven't been able to find a crack or something to go down. So it depends a little bit on the specific individual spot they're in as well. Yeah, whether they push up or not.
Shallow. Yeah. If the soil, like if they hit a compaction layer, that would push them up.
It depends. It depends on the time of the year as well. So you see a lot more radish out of the ground in summer than you do in autumn, of course, because the ground's getting moist and you find it easier to get down. But you do still see quite a few pop up out of the ground as the autumn and winter progresses.
All depends on the soil type, I guess, too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors. But if you're grazing and they are at that tuber out of the ground stage, and the majority are, if the sheep, in particular, sheep tend to do it a bit more, but they will take them out. There's not really a way of stopping them apart from just moving them on. As soon as you see that green leaf disappear off the radish and you can start to see just bare tuber, it's time to move them on, which presents its own difficulties if they're, for example, the first thing that they target. So it does depend on what their grazing preference is. Yeah. So we'll go on to mix 2 I've answered that okay.
The radishes actually, this is a funny thing. I've been surprised by the radishes. And in terms of preferencing, they actually taste not bad. They're not like a normal radish you'd buy from the supermarket. They don't have a real tangy flavour or anything. And if sheep's palate are anything like ours, which I don't think they would, but if they were, like they're not too bad.
No, I've eaten a few in my time, and they're not. The leaves and the tubers are, as you said, Tyler, pretty palatable to me. So I think
How
once the sheep
many are you eating a day, Tyler?
What's that?
How many are you eating a day?
Depends. If we run out of food with this coronavirus thing, well, I might have to up it.
They've got sort of 20% protein and about 12 or 14 ME, so they could be the next superfood, So.
We've got Jared now on, I think. Is that right, Jared? Sorry for all that mucking around.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
We might try a Zoom next time.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's just trying to use it on Apple or what it is, but anyway, I'm probably the only one having the trouble.
It seems to be different every time I try and use it, so I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Jade, can you continue on?
I can continue on.
Yeah.
Can you see our slides, Jared? We're up to Tyler's mix 2. Are you still there, Jared?
Yeah, sorry, Jade. What'd you say?
Can you see our slides okay?
Yes, yeah, no, it's all good, thank you.
Cool, that's good. All right. So we're just going through some of Tyler's photos. So this is his mix 2, but the photos are from the last meeting. So I'm just doing with everyone just a bit of what we started off with in our first meeting and then what it's gotten to. So this is just what it looked like in May, June. And then we'll swap over to now. So obviously pretty good utilisation there. And sheep have just come off that, haven't they?
Yes. So the photos you showed at the first photo you just had on the slide from last time, yeah, the sheep had just entered that and they just started grazing that section. So they just started grazing that section, and this section and the next slide that you just showed is the other end of the paddock. We're just using hot wires and a solar panel energizer, and so that's the other end of the paddock where they've just came out yesterday onto another paddock basically. So yeah, we just pulled them out.
Yep. And you're happy with that utilisation and their performance on that paddock?
Yep. Just above my hat in that second photo, you can see like the radish that they've chewed off, which they've generally done.
Yep.
yeah, again, no real preference. I can't really see a preference in what they're eating apart from the radishes, and that might just be because they stand out. They do just trample over a lot of leaf material on the ground and that type of stuff. But I suppose that's part of the aim is to put a bit of stuff back into the soil and maintain the cover. Yeah, I will just add they have actually we've maintained two issues. We had some issues with some hypocalcemia with the sheep not receiving enough calcium, obviously out of the pastures that were there, even though they were mixed pastures and stuff. So we actually lost 8 ewes in a short amount of time before we actually got on to the issue with the vet and working out that we just needed to totally boost up their calcium intake. So that has been an issue with them on it. And part of that is we've maintained some grain feeders in the paddock with high amounts of limestone with the grain. So two things: introduce the lambs to grain feeders because they might be on grain feeders later in their life, and also to get that lime intake into the sheep system. So yeah, I'll just chuck that point in there as well.
Did you end up injecting the whole mob, Tyler?
No,
just the down one.
Yeah, we were just injecting the down ones with 4 in 1, and then just probably put about 10 dry licks in the paddock. When this is initially, I mean, we're still maintaining dry licks in the paddock, and then also fed, put some bales of hay out and covered the hay in limestone, and that type of thing to try and get intake of calcium into them quickly.
Yep, and that buffering, that whole stimulation from the hay for calcium release from the bones.
Yeah, so it was a bit frustrating because we had this awesome feed and I thought we were doing a really good job, and it's like got this big missed species thing, and then I just went out there one day and there's like 6 sheep on the ground looking paralysed or whatever, and anyway, we weren't keeping up with the calcium. So we did have some licks in the paddock, but we just weren't. We didn't have enough, and we weren't maintaining them well enough.
So has that happened before on pastures, or is it a function of the cover crop, do you think?
From talking to a vet by the name of Tristan Jubb, who's a bit of a sheep specialist, it's just a combination of the fact that they'd probably come off a high grain diet on stubbles, and then they got shipped to this green feed, and they were big intake of material, and the ewes are also quite fat, probably too fat, and he said fat ewes don't release calcium into their system, or the fat holds the calcium up. So that was another issue as well, and then just the fact that it had lambs on them potentially being a drain. And he said it might have just been a weather event or something like that at the time that put the sheep that were on edge over the edge, and and they were starting to go down, sort of thing. So
maybe preferentially picking out cereal first too.
And that's possible.
Yeah, he said that too. I showed him photos of what they were on, and he said oats are naturally quite low in calcium, and the fact that they would have been fast growing and lush, probably the sheep would have been going for that. Yet they're actually the lowest calcium concentrate, if that makes sense.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, frustrating. Anyway, on top of it now.
Yeah, good.
What are you going to be doing now with that, Tyler?
So originally the plan was that oat rate there is about 20 kilos, I think, to the hectare, or 25 kilos to the hectare, and I just put that in there for quick feed, and the idea was that would be spraying the grasses out when it sort of got some growth back. But I don't know. Anyway, it'll be continued to use as sheep feed, but I don't know if we'll just leave the grasses in there for now, or what the go is. Haven't really worked it out.
Okay.
But it will be continued to be rotationally grazed. ewes or lambs will come back there again, and it'll keep on getting grazed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, just for everyone here, I don't think I properly introduced Alison Frisky from BCG, who was dropping out and had trouble getting back in. And that's who's been the other person that's been speaking. And I'll just tell you that Ali's going to come around to everyone in the next week or so, and do some monitoring or have a look and set up some photo points with you. Anyway, you can say what you're going to do, Ali, but I just thought I didn't properly introduce her at the beginning because you weren't there.
Here then. Yep. We'll do that at the end of Jade's photos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we'll head on to Tyler's mix 3, which was a lovely lot of veg with a few other things in it. So talk us through that, Tyler. So this is Tyler's photos from May, June, and now this is a lovely little cherub in what the paddock looks like now. So looking really good.
Yep. Yes. So that's so yeah. This is like a veg dominated with what it said: tillage radish and turnips, some clovers. Had some lucerne in there to see how it persists in such a mix. If we had more sheep or required the feed, this probably would have been grazed by now. You can see the canola, some of the canola that I put in there is going to flower. The tillage radish is bolting and will be going to flower soon. But we just don't have enough mouths at the moment, which is a good problem to have. But this potentially will get lambs. We'll just keep this paddock to wean lambs onto or something like that and park them on there. So yeah, that's probably all there is to mention about that. Obviously, similar had a pretty dry June and July. But yeah, these radishes that aren't touched are obviously going quite aggressively. That one in the photo is one of those ones that you said is mostly above ground rather than in ground.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably all to add. I can add to it at the moment.
Tyler, are you finding that is the radish hitting a bit of a hard pan? Like, is it popping up because it's hitting something that it can't go through? Do you think? Like, they look like they're good sizes, and there was some sort of longer, skinny ones that look like they're perhaps going down. But do you think there's a bit of a barrier?
Yeah, definitely. I mean that's I don't know, a red clay, I call it anyway, in some of that paddock going up onto the rise, which it might turn to a bit more of a loam. Compaction, definitely an issue in that paddock, and it might have just been on a wheel track or something like that. But yeah, I can't really tell if it hits a hard spot or not. They're all, when you pull them out, they're all sort of shaped. They're still all shaped V down, and they've got the roots punching down. Obviously, it's just found it easier to grow up and down, I guess. I can't really explain it. There are other ones that are much more in the ground than that, but that's just one that's poking out. So,
do they taste the same as they get bigger?
I'm no expert, but yeah, I can't really see a big difference there.
Tyler, with the mix at the moment, I know it's still heavily veg dominated, but are you a little bit happier at this stage of growth with, has everything else caught up? It looks like everything else has caught up a little bit more in that photo than earlier. Would you say that's
it looks much less of a veg paddock.
Yeah.
Potentially I was toying up whether I should be spraying the grasses out of it, which I haven't done. I'm just thinking I'll just probably try and put hot wires in that paddock, which I haven't in the past, and sort of force sheep to sort of try and eat a few weeds. I'm concerned that there's brome grass in there, and sheep don't really like to target, like they seem to leave brome grass behind and just let it go, which is a concern. So I'll just see what happens, whether I just have to bomb it all out or at all and just drop the brome grass setting seed. I'll just play it by ear, but it hasn't. Originally, I was thinking spray it, give it a grass spray, but at this stage, I'm just letting it go. So.
Sure. That's good. Plenty of nitrogen going back into that paddock.
Yeah, it all looks quite fresh, and considering we've had it, I mean, it's just that good autumn start that we've had, and it's got complete ground cover, so the ground, the surface of the ground's still moist, if that makes sense. So it's all looking
The
good.
radish would be using quite a bit of nitrogen too, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they do tend to pull it up into that tuber, but probably the good thing, not so much with the ones that have a bit out of the ground, but the ones that are sort of flush to ground level, when the stock, if they do terminate them, if there's a fair bit of that tuber in the ground, they'll release that nitrogen back. So there'll obviously be nitrogen in the leaves that cycles through the animal, but the tuber, if there's a reasonable amount or percentage of it in the ground, it will release back into the soil, which is good. So they take it up, but they also release it.
They don't pull the tuber out first.
Yeah, that's right. They can do that if they're not, if they're top heavy. Yeah, they'll nudge them out. But often with sheep, they just scallop to the surface of the soil, and that's all they get. Alrighty. Last one, I think. Yeah. So this was a similar mix to last one, but not as much vetch in there, and some rye corn as well, Tyler. So quick happy snap of what it looked like a couple of months ago, and then this is what it looks like now. So obviously the rye corn's done its thing and looks like a sea of grain. What do you think about the mix, Tyler?
Yeah, I just thought I'd put rye corn in there to see what it did and how it performed. That paddock there is generally a poor performing paddock that has, my simple terms, I call it it's got some salt issues and heavy clay with some salt issues that doesn't really grow anything, and it's not an efficient cropping paddock in terms of machinery or anything, so it's well suited to grazing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd put this in there and see what it's like, because I've seen it grow before, and yes, it's gone to head earlier than I thought, but I'm not concerned about that. I know sheep don't seem to really preference it from my previous experience. They'll probably just leave those heads there, and my idea was that it potentially will just maintain cover on the paddock, especially being a poorer soil type. So again, it's evident that my sowing rates were too high with everything else. The cereal rye from memory was sown at about 20 kilos to the hectare or thereabouts, I think. Potentially less, and I mean it's gone well, but I'd probably just wasted a few dollars, I think, in sowing a few other things too heavy, if that makes sense. So I could definitely save a bit more or sow more ground with the same seed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And the sheep have just gone into this paddock. The sheep have left where they were, and they've gone into this. So I don't have any comment about what they're preferencing or anything like that at this stage, but I'm just guessing they're going to leave that cereal rye behind. Yeah.
So if they do leave it behind, what was the pasture before you put the crop in? You said it was a salty sort of paddock which can grow a lot, but what was in there?
It was a bit of a cover crop. Not a cover crop, sorry. It was a bit of a mixed species forage crop, similar to this, but it was mainly barley, vetch, small amount of grazing canola, small amount of tillage radish last year. Yep. So
and prior to that, a pasture paddock, or?
No, prior to that, it had been cropped to predominantly a couple of years of barley that was cut for hay, basically. Yep.
So would you say the barley or the rye corn has coped better with the paddock?
Oh, well, the rye corn looks more impressive because of its height. Yeah. But the barley did perform okay. But there's still patches you can't see, but there's still patches in that paddock that are not growing anything. Like that, just nothing grow, if that makes sense. So gives you an idea. And I don't know if I need to just get some old bales of straw and spread it out there or what the go is, but there's still patches out there that don't grow anything. I just haven't shown that in the photo.
Sure. Last question. With the rye corn, because it has gone to head, it is a bit of an early maturing crop type. If the sheep do leave it, will you let it just drop its seed on the ground and volunteer next year as part of a mix?
Yeah, I have no issue if that happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, as long as it doesn't attract a stack of mice or something, that might be the problem. But I'd just graze. I suppose if that was a concern, I'd just graze it again and hope the sheep just cleaned up whatever food source there was. So yeah, I've seen this grown before, and I wanted to give it a go because in the future, I figured it might have been an alright mix to give shelter. If you were going to be lambing now, say in winter or even a week ago, and you didn't have tree shelter belts or whatever, I did wonder how it would work as like a shelter for wind protection for lambs, or whether it would serve as that, whether the lambs would just get lost in it, I don't know. But it just we've got some paddocks that don't have a great deal of shelter for lambing, and I just thought, well, if you had a paddock like this that you could water up or something like that, or just get going early and you were lambing in July or something, well, it'd be like good cover for lambing ewes.
Yes. Yep. As a little aside to that, there was and it's a different time of year, but the plant standability, I suppose, was the same. But they had a spring sown in dry times trial at a dryland site in Bairnsdale in Gippsland, and they put some multi-species mix in, which was good, and one of mine had rye corn in it, and I put another one in which had oats, and it was spring sown, but it's a pretty flat, windy site, and the standability of the rye corn compared to the oats over spring and into summer was amazing. So it did actually help the radish and the turnips and everything else that I put underneath the rye corn suffered a lot less from wind and sun damage than what I put underneath the oats. So yeah, I think in terms of shelter, I think it'd be pretty handy.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to move far if there's plenty to eat.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
They should eat the understory and
Yeah.
get underneath the rye corn. Yeah.
We did have some feedback from the Raywood group who were grazing, who were lambing in a canola paddock and grazing the canola. They said it was quite wet. I made the same comment and said, oh, it looked like it would have been good cover for the lambs, but the landholder said it was actually quite wet. The canola, whether it was holding more water or whether it was just because there was so much plants and it's dewy in June and July. So yeah, he was sort of saying
canopy effect.
Yeah.
Canopy effect, yeah.
But he didn't lose any lambs though.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I've got a picture in a minute of that.
Cool. All right. We'll let Tyler off the hook. Do we have Jared available now?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's not quite as impressive as Tyler's, I don't think. He's got some good feed there.
Oh, they're all pretty impressive. They're all growing, so that's a really good start.
Your sheep probably weren't dying, Jared.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you always lose a few, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a few. Jared's been doing some adventurous stuff, so we've got a few different scenarios here. So we'll go through them. The only one I wasn't sure whether I had pictures on was the summer cover under the pivot. Jared, I don't know whether I've got current photos of that.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't get there.
That's okay.
It's pretty much had a grass spray over it, and there's about 1,400 head in there at the moment. So they just smashed it, and they're about to. at the weekend, I think. So
Okay. So what if you put a grass spray over it? So your brassicas were still surviving into the autumn
Yes.
from the summer?
yes, so the brassicas and tillage radish were still surviving. They'd obviously be eaten out at the moment. And there was a fair background of medic in the paddock, so that was probably pretty dominant there as well. But just for the barley grass, I just had to do something because it's a bit of a nightmare with the sheep. So.
Oh, that's a good result if it's giving you, I suppose, lead feed, stuff you can graze now while your pastures, the pastures are probably selfish, but to have that feed wedge coming in.
Yeah, definitely. So they're pretty much just going onto a veg canola mix next.
Mm.
The idea is to try and get this paddock into a sun cover for this summer, maybe to finish off some lambs and that kind of thing. But we'll see how it pans out. I did have to spray some buttress broad strike over areas just for the stemless sizzle. And that's probably did knock everything around a fair bit. But the radishes were awesome out there. Like they were huge. Like they were growing that big. It was sort of opening up the ground, if that makes sense. Like cracking the ground all around. And the sheep just loved them. Like I couldn't believe it how much they love them and pull them out of the ground and then sort of keep chewing on them. It's good.
Good. Were they flowering at the time, Jared, when you put them into the paddock?
There was the odd one that was just starting to flower. I was actually a bit worried about it. I was like, radish is a farmer's nightmare, so
that's right.
I was trying to run over everyone that I seen that was flowering. But, the sheep they quickly ate them up. They seem to be really target the radish, I've found.
Yes, yeah. I think from what I've seen, especially when they're flowering or they've elongated and you can see the head of the radish, the little broccoli floret sort of shape, they're actually a little bit more palatable at that later growth stage than they are when they're really lush and quite young. So I'm not surprised. Well, and they still eat them when they're young and leafy, but I think they get a bit more palatable the older they get to a certain point, obviously. So that mid to late timing just before they're starting to flower, I reckon they just love them.
Yeah, and I found the later we planted them, or the less of the areas that didn't get water, they're really terrible. It seems like they need to be. Well, this is just my experience, that they really need to be sort of watered up in that late March, April window to really get the benefit of them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they just go dormant. Or they seem dormant, or they just whether they don't compete well enough when the temperatures get a bit cooler against the other plants, and they just really don't get the tubers that we've seen this year, sort of watering them up early.
Yeah. I think, either watering them up or, in some cases, further south, we're a bit lucky to have those earlier rains. There's a huge difference between, as you said, getting them up in sometime in March or early April versus getting them up in May and June. They're just chalk and cheese.
I do.
All right, well, we'll get stuck into your photos as is now. So this is your first, not your first paddock, the first selection of your paddocks, which is the winter cover. So you can see, everyone can see the radish shoot off the ground level like we've been talking about. What did you think of this paddock?
I guess it was watered up in that March window. Grew a lot of biomass early on, and then was grazed heavily sort of twice, I guess. with maybe a month break in between. There's, yeah, I tried to, in some of the other photos, I tried to get, I don't know, a photo of where the water, where the crop germinated on the water. There's literally hardly any weeds, whereas the ones that germinate on rainfall are just like full of weeds now. Like the weeds are dominating over the crop. So yeah, just I guess the competition of the cover crop early on either didn't let the weeds germinate, or they just couldn't compete with the cover crop in those early stages. And probably definitely overgrazed it. But the medic or the clover sort of sub background is probably becoming pretty dominant now, which is good to see.
Yes, definitely. No issues with grazing those paddocks, Jared?
Not at this stage. Probably a little bit of mastitis in the ewes, but that's probably not to blame for all the feed they were eating, maybe. Probably more management. But yeah, no, I didn't notice any health impacts of the sheep. They probably had molliphos in troughs, ad lib sort of oaten hay and straw, and grain self feeders as well. So.
So this was your mixed into, this was your barley grass paddock where you had a bit of an issue with barley grass.
Yeah.
So we've got photos where just where you're about to graze with the gator, and then when you had grazed, and then on the right hand side is some newer photos. So how have you grazed that paddock twice? Or more than twice?
I sort of strip grazed this one a little bit at the start. And yeah, that was pretty successful. The rye corn is, I don't know, you're probably in the patches that didn't get grazed heavy enough. It has a head out, and it's probably a metre high, but it's pretty sparse.
Yep.
But yeah, it probably doesn't look amazing at the moment. There's the other half of there's ewes and lamb. There might be 100 ewes and lambs on there at the moment. Also ewes that are lambing, so they're only got young foot. And the other half of that paddock, there's an oat clover grass sort of mix on there, and they're staying on that. But I guess it does look a lot fresher and more, appealing at the moment. So I don't blame them.
Yeah. What's your gut feel in terms of the barley grass? So you sprayed it?
Yes,
it
had
come back?
I put Shogun over the cover crop area.
Yep.
So yeah, just try and reduce the numbers further. But I couldn't believe I was saying again that the areas that got the water compared to didn't get the water, which I'm pretty sure might be on your next slide.
Mm-hmm.
It was I guess promising to see if you had I don't know, maybe a semi-clean paddock that you wanted to try and push the barley grass numbers further down. Like, you can see that the cover crop would definitely help you win the battle along the way.
Good to know.
It's been it has been good feed, definitely.
Oh yeah, and then there's some more photos there as well.
Yeah, so the one on the left, that's pretty much where the water went, which is, it's in the same bay, I guess, but the photo on the left is where the water went, and in the background is where the water hasn't been lasered for a while, so it sort of missed that area. So you can just see the huge difference in pressure of the barley grass, and it's sort of, I guess, because the sheep trample over the paddock, it just pushes that cover on the ground and just suppresses the other weeds. But at the same time, you're probably getting less feed value on the recovery. But it's probably, it wasn't the ideal paddock, and it's probably a bit of a back burner what we did. So it's not ideal management practices, I guess. The photo on the bottom right just showed there was a radish that was getting smashed by red leeks. But that was probably the worst one I could see. So I just took a photo of it. But there's other ones that weren't that far away that were hardly affected. So
I had some. I was sowing some radish into my paddocks as well, and it is amazing. I had a couple not far out of the gateway that I was just keeping an eye on, and there was one that just didn't thrive from day dot basically, and he was only not very far from a couple of others, and it just ended up dying, that particular one. Just got heaps of red leaves on it, and then they nailed it. But the other ones look fine, and as you said, not very far apart. So sometimes there's just a couple, hopefully, in a paddock that just don't make it.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, we'll keep moving. So your next photo here is a brassica and vetch raised paddock. Was that irrigated?
No, it wasn't irrigated. It was sown. It was sown really early, but sort of half germinated on one of the rains in March, I think it was. But yeah, it sort of was half dead for a long time until we got the decent rains in April. But yeah, it grew a power of feed. It was heavily grazed, and now it's just got a smaller mob of lambing ewes on the moment. But yeah, definitely probably the ideal paddock to put a winter cover into next year.
Yeah.
Just to get that competition to keep the grass numbers down.
When would you say it germinated?
Maybe it would have been early April. I would have thought. Yeah, it did germinate, and then it just sat there for a while. Got that rain in the third week of April, I think it was. So yeah, was a bit nervous in there for a while.
I bet. And how quickly did you graze it? Were you on in 8 weeks or 10 weeks or?
So it would have been maybe 10 to 12 weeks. So it sort of got crash grazed. The ones that went to the summer cover were on this this vetch canola paddock, which is about 30 hectares for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. That's a good result.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it. Obviously, the grasses have been sprayed out. But yeah, no, it was quite surprising. But there are areas of stinging nettle that are sort of fairly dominant. So obviously lacking something. I'm not sure whether anyone else has got any other suggestions, but I did see one thing that could be lacking a bit of calcium that could be causing that. Sort of it is around trees mainly, and sort of old areas where we fed out hay and that kind of thing pretty consistently.
Yeah, they do like a bit of high fertility as well. If they're around trees and stock camps and stuff, you're right about the calcium, but they also are a bit of a user of nitrogen as well. So that might be part of the issue too.
So does anyone? I didn't know what to do, whether slash them or put an eco par and sort of mix over them. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
And your irrigated lucerne and clonate barley.
Yeah, so this was originally sown to a winter cover, and it was extremely poor management. It was watered, and must have been in March when we're getting those few. We got that 30 mil rain event, I think, and I seen it on the forecast, and I was like, oh, there's no way we're going to get that. Never do. And sure thing, we got it. Yeah, just like pretty much the day after we finished watering, and it was a bit of a disaster from when it started, but it was okay. But the barley grass, a few areas of cape weed were sort of taking over, so I put 3 litres of spray seed over it, and just planted barley and lucerne back into there. A couple of the bigger plants, cape weed got through, which was expected just because it didn't have the Diron in there just for the new lucerne. But just trying to mix a few paddocks up a bit just to try and hit the weeds at a different time, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And you're happy with the establishment of both with each other, if that makes sense?
With the barley and the lucerne?
Mm.
Not too bad. There was a few red legs in there, so they did get into the lucerne more than the barley, obviously. So probably not overly successful, but it wasn't a huge rate at the end of the day. So we'll just keep chipping away at it, just to try and like you don't need a lot of plants there, but just to try, like, because it is a pasture paddy. But if we can get a quarter to survive, maybe it just sort of keeps topping up the paddock.
That's right. Yeah.
And it is a problem paddock. Like it was when it was lasered the last time, bays were spun around, so there's areas there that are sort of, like Tyler said, don't grow anything.
Mm-hmm.
But we sort of we spread a heap of straw. We hired a machine and spread straw on those areas, and it did make a big difference. But there's a few areas that are still giving trouble. But we're just trying to, every time we put like open hay or straw in the paddock, get them on those areas. So obviously the sheep, hopefully, all they do, they spread them around. And if the sheep haven't quite finished the bale or whatever, you're going past, you just move the bale into the next area. And we're slowly winning. It's just a bit of a long battle.
Good on you. That's a really good way to tackle it.
Jade, we're just starting to run out a little bit of time.
We are, aren't we? Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we just quickly get on monitoring and also what Ali might do.
Yep. So that's all for Jared, and we've gone through Tyler. So I think Kyle's the only one left.
I don't think we've got Kyle on.
Okay. Right. Well, I will just
him.
Yep. Well, I'll just quickly show you his photos, if that's all right. So he hasn't been a resounding success. He has got plant numbers there, but it's been pretty dry and frosty. So when he shared his photos, he said they're not wonderful, and I said, well, it'd be amazing what an inch or two of rain would do. So this is what he's got in his paddocks. So he has got plant numbers there, but they're just not thriving at the moment. So he's got some tillage ocean turnips and some lucerne there as well, and a few beans and peas. I think he just needs a good rain. So that's really all for him. He's got establishment. Hopefully he has a good spring on it, and it gets plenty of feed.
So no stock on yet?
No stock on yet, no.
Yeah.
And Bernie and Gavin, we haven't been able to get them some photos, although there are photos that have been taken. So we might leave that for next time. And that's about it for everybody. Anne asked me to do some quick videos of just a few monitoring things. So I have done them today, but I haven't uploaded them yet. So we'll send you all around the link for those a little bit later.
Yeah. Thanks, Jade. So I've asked Ali Frisky to do some monitoring of all of these paddocks, well, at least some of the paddocks that are worth doing something on. So perhaps some measurements and some photo points. Perhaps we can look at putting some cages out and or doing some feed tests. So Ali's going to decide with each person what the best course of action is, I'm hoping. Is that right, Ali?
Yeah, that's right. So I'll make contact with you all and try and come and have a visit the week after next, if that suits you, and jump into the paddock. And you're at different stages with the grazing, and yeah. So we'll determine what we're going to do on those paddocks when we get there, I think. So yeah. So Anne was just mentioning some exclusion cages though, and so it'd be great if you could pop up some cages in paddocks to protect some of those areas. I don't know if some of you have already got them, but if you haven't, still put them out now. And Anne's just going to bring up a little slide.
I think I am.
Because it just helps keep some plants fresh and untouched that we can sample and have a look at what they're eating when we get there.
So if I go there and here.
I was going to say, I think I've also seen landholders use, the IBC cages, not the plastic that's in the middle, but the IBC. So I don't know how heavy they are though, and how stable they are, but even if you dump one of those out in the paddock and maybe cover it with some mesh or wire or something to stop bigger mouths or smaller mouths anyway, some mouths getting in there.
Can anyone see that?
No.
Not yet, Anne.
Oh. I'm not sure I've done that right then.
So you've got to hit the square with the arrow.
Yeah, I've already done that. It says share screen.
Oh, you've got to choose screen.
Do you have a separate screen to your laptop?
No, I don't. But I'm putting that on.
Does it have a red line around it?
No.
You've got to select. You've got to actually select the screen that you want to share, because if you've got multiple things open, it'll show all those multiple things that are open. You've actually got to click on that file that you want to share.
Yeah, I was doing that, but we might have to send it out.
No worries. It's just a few photos that show the size of things, I suppose. So if it's an area big enough, so an IBC cage is handy, and it'll be a small area. If you can make a larger area using a bit of sheet mesh or just cyclone fencing, they're gonna, like, the sheep can stick their heads in through that on the edge. But if it's large, there's plenty of protected stuff in the middle of that. So, and with the IBC, you might need a couple of star droppers just to pin it there, because they'll shuffle it around. No worries otherwise. Oh, here we go. You've got it up there.
I think I'm getting there.
You have.
Well done.
My ignorance. Hang on there. How's that?
Yep. So is that on here we go, on the presentation mode. So the one on the left there, you can see is probably about the size of an IBC. So if that's we can manage, then that's fine. But that right hand one, that's actually wedgetail at Hunts, I think, from a few years ago. So they're longer panels, sort of probably 2 meters long, and you've got plenty of room to jump in and take feed tests and samples from later on. Yep, and even those, even using sheep mesh, sheep will move around if they can. This was at Raywood a couple of weeks ago on this is a Grant Sims mix as well, and Fraser Lowry there. He's just used Cyclone, but he's made a big area, so there's plenty of stuff that they haven't grazed in the middle there. Yeah, keep going in.
Oh, do you want the bricks thing?
Oh, yeah, put the bricks up. Oh, this was just out of interest. We had, that one. We've been talking about preferential eating today, and so Fraser was just saying that the sheep were eating the cereal first on the 13th of June, and he took some bricks values, and so you can see for the cereal it's higher than those the peas and the vetch, and it's probably about the same as the tillage radish, but anyway, they're preferentially grazing it, whereas later on by mid-July they were eating the other things when their bricks levels had raised up quite similarly. So it was just, an interesting one. If anyone's got a bricks meter, just have a go with it.
And you've got one too, Ellie, is that right?
Yes, I've got a meter. So when I come around, I don't know if I'll do it on every paddock, but I'll look at things like dry matter and the ground cover. So I'll take some dry matter cuts and dry them out at Birchup in our labs there. And we'll test for bricks as well out of interest and between the different species, of course, and also if there's enough forage, they still do a feed test. And so depending on the paddock, if they're eating everything, I might take a collective one, but if they're preferentially picking something, then it'll be pretty interesting to grab a couple and compare separate tests on, say, the tillage radish or the cereal component in that crop. And if I'm able to meet you on the day too, if we can grab just those livestock sort of numbers and exactly when they went in and how many they are, what class they are, we can determine a grazing value for that period of time.
Is there more after that one? Yeah.
So this is just another paddock. Oh, sorry, that previous one. They've got 3 cages, and this is just a close up. So it just shows all that dry material inside the cage compared to outside the cage. So they don't mind cleaning up the dry stuff over time as well. This has just got a bit of rabbit netting around it, and there are a few gaps in there, but it's holding up and it's doing the job. So as best you can, try and make it large enough and secure enough that the sheep can't crash into it. And this was the paddock that Felicity was talking about before at Dusty Pascoe's the other day. And I've just got this photo and the next photo to demonstrate how quickly it changed in a couple of weeks. So it's probably a bit hard to see. I'm looking at this on my phone, but if we just go back and so Dusty actually sowed a mix last November, and where's his mix? He actually sowed birdseed, and it was full of sunflowers and corn, millet, sorghum, wheat, oats, and canola, and he got some feed out of it. And then with all the great summer rain in April, he went back in with some cereals and canola. So a lot of it, the canola's bolted. It's been sown into ideal conditions, and she's run right through. So you can, and Felicity was talking about the damp conditions underneath, so you can see how dense it all is. And the sheep are just below the horizon. You can see a few there. We're talking about protection for lambing, so they've lambed in there. And we walked up to the fence, and the sheep didn't even run away. They just felt they felt secure, I suppose. So, and they really didn't have to move far. They had enough water. They were able to move out of that paddock. There was a clean strip along the fence line, and also they could move into the dam next door to, if they needed a drink, but probably there was enough moisture in there for the most part anyway. So, and when I said that he didn't lose any lambs, that's probably apparently because it'd be really hard to find them if they did anyway, because it's really thick. And they had the whole family out walking the sheep out of the paddock the other day to muster them through the paddock on foot. So just the next photo, and now, so 2 weeks later, this is what the paddock looked like. So at the start, all they were doing was nipping off the top of the cereal plants in there, but by 2 weeks later, they were chomping on flowers, and they'd really stripped things quite down. So by having a cage, that really shows what was there. It's a great way of monitoring things because you can see what was there beforehand, and then that changed 2 weeks later.
And this is also an example of a socially distanced field
Yes.
tour. Is that right?
Absolutely, and that photo wasn't set up. When I put it up today, I went, oh, phew, that looks about right. So there you go.
Good.
Yep.
Everyone
Travelled separately in vehicles, and yep, and did the right thing out in the paddock. So that was good.
Okay, so is everyone? Well, there's not everyone on, but I'll contact everyone and make sure you're happy that Ali might come. Where am I gone? Have I still got? Sorry, have I unshared that?
Yep.
Yeah, so, and then I'll send Ali everyone's details and she'll be in contact to try and catch up the first week of August, Ali, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So I'll try and give you a call next week and sort something out. So I need to know where to go, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously there's quite a few paddocks that each person's got, so we might end up just choosing one. Or the most interesting one, or one that's
or ungrazed or something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and as Anne said, photo points as well. So like stick in the fence that we can go back to and take the same shot from.
Yeah. Jade, have you got anything else you want to add?
Just a final comment. Really great job from everyone to get them in and up and try this multi-species stuff. So I'm just wrapped with the group as a whole. I think you've all done a great job. So that's the only thing I've got to add.
Yeah, so I think everyone's done a very good job. It's a pity we're not got such a good job using this Microsoft meetings, but anyway, we'll sort that out a bit better hopefully next time. I had a couple of other things, but maybe I'll send them as an email instead. So are we going to have another catch up in about a month? Does that sound about right? Everyone, I think? Anyway, because we'll have some results then from what Ali's done with the monitoring too, I suppose. So that's what I'm thinking. I did have a soils day organised for the 12th of August with David Hardwick, but he obviously is over the border and can't, well, he can come to Victoria, but he can't go home again. So he's suggesting that we either do an online thing or or something in October, November. So it'd have to be early October, I think, if that's the case. Anyway, I might send out an email and get a consensus for that. So has anyone got any questions or comments? Otherwise, we might call it a day, I think.